And we are recording.
Excellent. Good. Any good questions?
No good questions.
Only bad
No
ones.
good questions. I appreciate that. Thank you for that, Levi. Of course, others would have just been quiet, you know.
But others...
I don't know what the Corona protocol is where each of you lives, but maybe that's one thing that's on my mind to point out. Here in Eretz HaKodesh, so they recently lightened the restrictions with the assumptions that things are better here. Hi, Dovi. Hi, Yehuda. Hi, Ezra. That things are somehow better in Eretz HaKodesh. The numbers seem to be bet down. There are the conspiracy theorists who project that the government is not being totally candid about the numbers. In order to jumpstart the economy, they're trying to create maybe a false optimism to get people going and confident. But the post-game are generally very conservative, small c, in their response, even though they've now permitted shuls to open, but they're with great restrictions. Everybody's meant to stay with a mask on indoors. They're supposed to be 2 meters apart, and windows open, and the logical kinds of restrictions. And is this familiar? Is this something that's going on by you? Are there different standards?
Some of the out-of-town schools are starting to open up. Similar standards, but definitely not inside yet. Pretty much just in the parking lots. And
I see.
And pre-reserved. Like you have to email the shul, and they have to give you either
well, that's also something that in theory, that's also in theory that it being done in some shuls here. But in practice, I know there's some excellent shiurim going around. Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz has been continuously critical of people's negligence. The illusion that somehow the whole thing's over and we're all fine, or it won't happen to me, or I'm young, I don't mind if I get it kind of attitude. You have to remind people who have that attitude that you may be young, you may not mind. Are you prepared for the consequences if you infect another person and thereby kill them?
Oh, so
that's something that people have thought through. Most people just don't think.
Is that considered murder or no?
No, it's not directly murder. It's certainly some kind of rashlanus, which means extreme gross negligence. We're learning now the second parak of Makos, which is all about a ritzicha b'shogeg, killing inadvertently. But notice my choice of words. Inadvertent doesn't mean accidental. It means the person is complicit somewhere in there, and there's criminal negligence, I think we'd call it in legal terms. And we have to realize, we should be on the extreme side of zehirus. Zehirus is a chapter in the Mesilas Yesharim. It's a general quality. I think our scroll translates it usually as vigilance, but it means being careful. Obviously, that's a prized value. Hi, everybody's come in. Sorry, I haven't greeted you personally. I like to do that, but now it feels almost overwhelming. But vigilance and being careful is a quality that overlaps so many areas of life. We should be vigilant in our sensitivity to each other's feelings. We should be vigilant with regards to how we pray and keeping to our set Torah learning times. And we should be vigilant with regards to our health and the health of the people around us in a world magefa, in an epidemic. So there's a stubbornness on the part of many of the current derech students to put on masks, even though we've said this is the new rule, this is the way it is. We're only permitted to stay open if we follow the guidelines. They include having masks. Still nothing. So we've been friendly, we've been gentle, we've been jokey, derech style. We try not to come out too hard, right? But people don't put on the masks. Whatever, however they rationalize it. So I did a me this morning after davening this morning, and again, virtually every day, me or Rabbi Pittem says something. One of us says something, So after Rabbi Pittim, was in Avelus because, his father died of coronavirus. And I said, Rabbi Pittim, I have Shaila. If the Gedolim have all said that this is you're only allowed to open your shuls if everybody cooperates and adheres to the guidelines, which front and center includes wearing a mask. So a person who willingly comes in and doesn't wear a mask, is he considered doing an Aveira? And we talked about that. I said, well, then and that next part of the question, if he's doing an Aveira, then is it what the poskim call a mitzvah hababa Aveira? Are you familiar with the category?
Mm-hmm.
A mitzvah hababa Aveira. I said, does that mean that possibly the people's tefillah doesn't count if they're here davening without a mask on around that time? And I did it I wasn't jokey at this stage. I was doing it with a straight face. And at that point, there were a few people around the base medrash who started responding defensively, right? Almost predictable. It's almost like a script you could write in your own mind, right? How this would pan out. Well, the rationalizations came, and at one point, probably the worst response, somebody said, "Well, who are the rabbis anyway?" You shouldn't get too much pleasure from that, Ari. Right.
That's so bad.
No, that's right. No, what you just did now is a better reaction. Just go one big, where do we begin, right? I said, do you keep kosher? He said, of course. I said, how do you know how to keep kosher if the rabbis don't tell you? So you could be keeping Chag Matan Torah coming up in a couple days? He said, sure. I said, how do you know the date? Because if you want to be anti-rabbinic, you can go with the Baitusim and the Tzdukim and the Karaites. They had a different calculation when this day fell. It's axiomatic in Judaism. We listen to the rabbis for all kinds of reasons that we're not going to digress right now into. But anyway, that was our discussion, and just that I'd get on my soapbox for a bit and share that. Somebody else asked.
They counted from the first Shabbos, if I recall correctly, right?
What?
They counted from the first Shabbos and Pesach.
They counted. They counted from the first Sunday, and
from the first Sunday, first
their calendar. The Karaites. It always comes out on a Sunday, the Sunday following Pesach, not necessarily Vav Sivan.
That just sounds like they want a 3-day weekend.
Could be.
Well, if I recall correctly, the pasuk says after the first.
Yeah, Misfarsim lechem imacharas Shabbos. Shabbos, but Chazal understand. You can't read the Torah, you can't read anything in the Bible without Chazal. We certainly have not been reading Iyov without the very careful guidance of Chazal. And Chazal understands Shabbos is a term that describes Shabbos. It also describes Yom Tov.
Mm-hmm.
So Shabbos in this case means Pesach. So we count the 50 days after Pesach. That's what it is. I mentioned here also somebody had said, well, he got to shul. Somebody else, an Israeli, he said, well, I got to shul, I forgot my mask. I like to put on a mask in general. He said, but, if I would have left then, I would have missed Psukkah Zimra. So I suggested to him, I said, you know what you should do? I said, go home and get your mask, skip Psukkah Zimra, because it's a bigger mitzvah to guard your health. Shmoras nafshecha is the lashon of the pasuk. And consider that your Psukkah Zimra. What is Psukkah Zimra, people? Right? What are we doing here? What is Psukkah Zimra? Psukkah Zimra is I'm singing praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's, in the scheme of things, you should by all means say Psukkah Zimra. Don't get me wrong. But if it's a question of weighing one versus the other, skip it and guard your health and your family's health and the shul's health. And I said, even if you're cynical about the mask, that's not saving any lives, you're making a statement to everybody around you because you're a role model and you're telling them, I'm taking this thing seriously. We all should. Because the more people who are, that's one of the residual benefits of the mask, because it's making a statement to yourself, to everybody out there. Hey, yeah, this is real. There's something big going on in the world today, despite our collective denial. Okay, enough editorializing. Anybody have a reaction or a comment?
There's just one question I have regarding the masks. If we really have this extreme stance of Ushmartim Snafsher Sechem, then when the pandemic's over, because the reason the mask is to not harm other people, then why shouldn't we not wear a mask after the pandemic? Or even before the pandemic, why were we not wearing masks before?
So I don't advocate. Look, I'm really just responding to what so many big Rabbanim, I'm nobody. I'm talking about what big Rabbanim are saying. We really don't know. That's not Corona. We really have no idea, no clue how any of this is going to go down. And the mask may be flawed on every number of levels. So it's certainly true that they're not perfect. They're not foolproof by any stretch. I don't think you should be extreme. I think there are good reasons to take off your mask. Personally, I would take off your mask before you start eating. It's just really awkward otherwise, right?
How do you eat with a mask?
Although I told you what happened to me at Avram McGrefta's wedding in the old city. I put the mask back on. I got up from eating, right? And then, oh no, he's not coming up for dance. So I came back down to sit down. Took a big fork full of. They had a great fish dish with hummus and all kinds of other things. And I went, boom, right into my spaceman shield.
It's like the shower dilemma. Like whenever you walk into the shower and you're like, oh.
No, I don't think you'd be machmir, and you do your best is my point. But my point is that when everything's equal, there's no real excuse not to put on the stupid mask. Put on the mask. What are you worried about? You're not going to the beauty contest? Nobody's that beautiful. Don't worry about it.
I found dominating the mask. Like this morning, BRS finally are finally allowing minions. Like this, like stand in your own cone, wear a mask. If you're seen talking, they have like minion captains that come up to you and say, you're getting too close.
Right. I know that's the other end of all this. All the self-righteous, behavior police are now on a rampage. They're going to get you, Shammai, right? Look out for them. And I don't believe you should be that guy either. Don't get me wrong. No, I don't like having to point out everybody else's fault, and I know everybody's screaming at the joggers who don't have masks on. You don't need a mask when you're jogging. I'm advocating that we should do what the poskim have said to do, which is in general, certainly in a crowded space like shul tends to be smart. And in general, when everything's equal, thanks, Ezra. Ezra Brooker is demonstrating you're our role model for this evening. I feel safer being on a Zoom chat with you. In any case, just be generally safer. And as a general rule, we shouldn't mess around with this thing. Good. Okay. Good to see several of you who haven't been here in a little while. It's nice to see you back. This is our last official evening on Iyov, I think. We're going to be winding down right now. I threw out there again. I want to continue. I'm enjoying myself immensely. I really like the present assembled company. I wish we could actually be physically present, but second best is this. And short of that, I want to do something else with you. I have my own ideas that I'm going to brainstorm at the very end. I hope you stay on and be part of that discussion as well. If you have your own ideas, I'm open to suggestions. I may be up for preparing new material. I have a backlog of shiurim that I want to prepare, new stuff. I don't have time these days. Baruch Hashem, between this and my full load I'm giving in yeshiva every day, and we're going to go to Matyul, and I'm going to guide. The guys just finished an incentive for my shiur, so I'm taking them to the city of Yafo on the beach on Sunday. Like that, it was very, very busy. But maybe in a couple of weeks when derech is over, when the official derech is over, then maybe I'll have time to prepare. You'll tell me if you have some good ideas of things we'll learn together. Shall we go back to Iyov? Anybody have anything else to say on coronavirus and being safe? No. I mean, I do. The verse does say, it's quite famous. It deserves to be even more famous. We should make it a slogan and a byword in all of our houses. The verse says about safety, it says, V'chai behem. We had it a few weeks ago in Parshas Achrimos. It talks about the mitzvahs that you should live by them. I mean, Chazal famously darshan, V'lo shiamus behem. You shouldn't die keeping them. So the guy who goes to shul, he's doing a mitzvah by going to shul, no? But what are you doing a mitzvah by way of, doing it in a way that somehow puts people at risk? So we should do things. I had to explain this also when I took out the Sefer Torah and people lunged at it to give it a kiss. I said, throw a kiss, blah, blah, blah. Don't come close and give it a kiss. Stay distant. Hashem sees your kavanah. You don't need to get close. Just stay away from each other. That's part of the general collective wisdom. I don't think, does anybody know anybody of all the various, nobody knows anything, right? But of all the various expert opinions, does anybody say that it's a bad thing to keep social distance? I think that's one thing that everybody concurs.
Rabbi.
Yeah?
I get what you're saying,
but adorable, but take the stupid thing off so we can hear you.
Okay, fine. I get what you're saying about how like you shouldn't touch the Sefer Torah and stuff like that. And you shouldn't go crazy about keeping the mitzvahs. Like you can take steps to precautions and
Can I interject
like
something?
that.
A great line from Bleiweiss. He was critical of the people who broke into Meron. They got a daven in a minyan in Meron. He said, you're visiting, you're going to Meron, you want to see Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He and his son spent 13 years in the cave. They daven b'yechidus the entire time. We can daven alone. It's a great line. Go ahead, Ezra. I'm sorry to cut you off.
So what I was asking is for people that are like extremists and like the radical Jews. I know there's some there's different places around Jerusalem, Israel, like in Ramat Shemesh Beis. They won't wear masks and they'll do it out of blind. Some would say ignorance. Others would say faith. If somebody were to do that, are you telling me that God would purposely make them sick, or
I didn't say anything like that.
Probable.
I hope you didn't understand something like that from me. I don't presume to know. Certainly after a lengthy discussion on Sefer Iyov, I'm the last person to tell you that I understand how Hashem works exactly. I don't know. I mean, the person, I also put it in some sociological context. There's been for 150 years in this part of the world, in Palestine and then Eretz Israel, there's been an ideological struggle to keep religion. So when you see the guys that you're referring to, I think generally they're wrong, but I understand where they're coming from. It's part of this resistance that if you tell me to do anything that encroaches on my religious sensibility, I'm not going to do it. And so they perceive this to be a directive coming from the secular state. So their impulse is to rebel. No, I won't do it. I won't put on a mask. That's a new modernische kind of an idea. I think that's where they're coming from. Again, it's not the right way of thinking. They should be more, in the realm of shmor neshecha. You should value your and other people's lives. But when the resistance is not coming, I think, as you said, out of ignorance or they're coming from a religious point of view.
I agree with you about how they're coming from a religious point of view, but I was more asking about because they're doing it anyways. How do we know we have the right opinion as opposed to them who are saying that we should ignore that and we should.
I think you have to follow the major rabbis. The major rabbis.
They're not dying in droves, is what I'm saying. They're doing that and they're still alive.
We're not meant to look at that. You look at the bigger rabbanim and what they're saying. The bigger rabbanim are saying to take precautions. These guys are not big rabbanim.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Very straightforward, I think. All right. Last night was really key. I'm sorry if a few of you missed it. I encourage you to look it up. I'm also happy. Somebody requested at the very beginning that I send notes. I'm happy to send out my whole notes. They're not, as far as my notes go, they're really not so bad actually. They're pretty legible, and if something's not, you could always ask me. So if anybody wants them, they're on the I wouldn't say they're on the public forum, but they're for anybody here for sure. So yesterday when we left off, we were talking about, I think, some pretty important ideas. I'll tell you one thing. I used, if you remember the metaphor of Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the city boy who goes to the farm. I used that about 2, maybe 3 times in some discussion today. You know something's good when it comes up in a matter of your discussions with people. So last night we're trying to take total stock as much as can be done on such a monumental project such as Sefer Iyov. We went through, reviewed some of the major commentaries and how they see the book, and there's quite a wide range. Certainly everybody concurs that all the major themes of suffering, of good and evil, are brought to the forefront into sharp relief. We talked about different approaches. We were ending off, just a quick recap, at the very end, a bit from Bleiweiss on the book of Iyov. He says, trying to understand what Iyov means when he says nichamti. I either regret my words as one shot, or he's comforted by Hashem. What did Hashem exactly say that was comforting? I don't know. You look again, it doesn't look very comforting at all. He comes in a whirlwind and asks him a bunch of rhetorical questions. But we said three possible approach. One is just simply, could you do a better job of running this place than I can? Iyov, you have no idea. Another one, very resonant idea. He quoted Rabbi Bleiweiss, leave it to Rabbi Bleiweiss, quoting Shakespeare. He said, all the world is a stage, all the world is a play. And, we just, most of our angle when we come at it is we're the guy in the middle of the second act with a bit part who walks on, slips on a banana peel, falls, and then exits stage left. And we have no idea which part of the drama we're meant to push forward. But it all comes together, and if we're out in the audience, we see the whole thing. So, that's the role the guy's playing, and he was essential because it was a plot device that moved the whole thing forward. But we don't see that in the middle. And of course, in the middle, it all seems sometimes destructive, sometimes wanton, sometimes totally haphazard. And we understand that there's a grand scheme at play. The third approach, of course, is maybe Hashem, by not answering Iyov, that's the point. He's saying, I'm here, and I'm here with you, right? And we talked briefly, it came at the very end, so I hope it wasn't too rushed. The problem with answering kashas, sometimes the kashas are so gargantuan, are so colossal that the answers are a little bit too neat, and in their neatness, they're insulting. It's one of the profound reasons why when we are Menachem Avelim, we go in to visit people who are experiencing sometimes profound agony and grief. When they lose somebody, words can be just so ridiculous, right? So just be quiet. Stop prattling on. You think you know something. And sometimes even intelligently, well thought through words. Yeah, okay. Just be quiet, please. I mean, you know the halacha. The guy who's in Avelus, he sits there, he's quiet. If he doesn't want to speak, you don't start. You just sit there. The whole thing could be one extended lesson in awkwardness. Anybody been to a shiva that it's just you don't know what to do with yourself? It's totally awkward.
Not a shiva, but that's most of my life.
Oh no. Yeah, that resonates with me a little bit myself. Yeah, but I mean, shiva can be, we have our social skills, and we, chas v'sholom, if you're interacting with people. Well, I guess we don't have these anymore because nobody's social anymore. But I remember once when I had friends, and we actually interacted in the same room and did social things together. You talked, and then there was maybe a silence, but somebody started talking really quickly because you're not allowed to have silences. Silences can get too awkward, right? But you go and you pay a shiva call, and silence is the rule of the game. And if they don't want to talk, you don't talk at all. And if they want to talk, they introduce the topic, and you simply be sensitive and responsive to whatever they need, right? And if you're not sure about what to say because it sounds maybe stupid, don't say it. What is the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos? Right? Few things are as healthy as good old-fashioned shtika, quiet, silence. I always find I learned that Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and it absolutely kills the conversation afterwards. Okay, so that's a little bit of what we said last night, and maybe we'll say some new things right now. I also quoted, I quoted Rabbi, these are actually really good. I'm going to say these again, too. They're just so profound. Answers are too neat. In the face of suffering, sometimes we just need to have the comfort, and that can be embodied in the pasuk that we say in Mizmor LeDavid. We say Hashem roi lo echsar binos desha. We say lo ira ra ki ata imadi. I don't fear evil because you're with me. I feel your divine presence there. You're comforting me, and how specifically, pointedly are you comforting me? Shivtecha umishantecha. Hema yenachamuni. Remember, that's how we got into the discussion. Iyov had said this intriguing word, nichamti, nechama, nichum avelim. I've been comforted. Well, what comforts us? Shivtecha umishantecha. Hashem has his staff. I don't know, you could translate these words alternatively, but shivtecha could be a stick that you use to beat And sometimes we go through life and we're beaten up by it, right? And Hashem allows these things to happen. He has his ways and his wisdom, and we get beaten by life. That's part of it. Part of what happens here. Almost unavoidable. But then that's your shiftecha. But umishantecha, your staff, that's your comfort. That's what I lean on. I picture Moshe Rabbeinu, preferably not played by Charlton Heston, leaning on his staff, right? That's the comfort. He does that for us too. And then he quoted Nietzsche, right? When there's a why, humans can bear almost any what. And again, that which breaks me can ultimately make me stronger. A couple more ideas. The Panovitcher Rav. You know who the Panovitcher Rav was? Rav Kahaneman? Is anybody out there?
Nope.
Yeah, he was really good at fundraising.
Oh, he had the mightiest touch. You remember this story when he went with Rabbi Wein? It's one of my favorites. I like to tell. Do you remember this?
When he went with
He fundraised, and it was not easy. He worked very hard. He was exhausted by it through his life. But he went and fundraised. Rabbi Wein tells the story when the Panovitcher Rav went.
Yeah, I remember that.
To a certain fear. It's a great story. He took him to a certain, big spender, and he made his pitch. He's big, one of the most prestigious yeshivas in the world, Panovitch. And the Gvir took out his checkbook, wrote a very generous check, gave it to the Panovitcher Rav. The Panovitcher Rav looked at it and grimaced, made a face. So the Gvir said, "Is there something wrong?" Rabbi Wein, in telling the story, says at that stage he was ready to crawl under the table. He was so embarrassed, didn't know what to do. So Rav Kahaneman said, "Yes, in fact, there's something wrong." And the Gvir said, "Oh, really?" And the Panovitcher Rav said, "Yeah, you could do better." So the Gvir had never had this kind of treatment before. He said, "Well, how could I do better?" And the Panovitcher Rav said, "Another 0." You following? Mm-hmm. Another 0. Add another 0 at the end. So the Gvir said, "Can I have that check back, please?" And Rabbi Wein was prepared for the worst. He took the check back, tore it up, wrote a new check with the extra 0. He said, "If you're the Panovitcher Rav, you can get away with that."
Do Derek fundraising style.
Yeah, it's an aside. Look, the Panovitcher Rav lost his family, most of the yeshiva. He was in Palestine in 1941 when he couldn't get back to Lithuania. And so they all perished, and he and one son survived. And where other people experienced the horrors and were crushed, sometimes permanently, for the rest of their lives, his response to tragedy that, you want to compete with tragedy, Iyov, go look at the Panovitcher Rav's life. And you know what he did in response? Anybody remember this? No? Nobody knows? He went on and started building. He came to Bnei Brak, which was desolate, poor, nothing going on in Bnei Brak. He said, "I'm building Panovitch here." They were bombing Tel Aviv. The Germans had dropped bombs on Tel Aviv. The Jewish agency was burning papers. They were eating the national papers, because they were concerned the Germans were going to get to Tel Aviv and all the information would be incriminating, right? And the Panovitcher came out and set the cornerstone of the yeshiva, and they laughed at him, and he built it. Right? He founded orphanages. See, the whole part of the Yaldei Tehran, the refugee children who'd survived the horrors and got to Tehran in Iran and eventually made it to Palestine. He struggled over their souls and lost, but that's another parsha in itself. Anyway, the Panovitcher Rav was really one of the modern heroes and somebody worth learning about. So he said like this, he was asked, anybody have Yiddish out there? I hope not, because I'm about to botch the next Yiddish sentence and nobody there is going to be able to correct me. So there. The Yiddish goes something like this. Farvost es empfert nicht. Anybody? Somebody's got to have some Yiddish, no?
Something is nothing.
Nah. The question was, why doesn't Hashem answer?
I thought nicht was nothing.
Right. Nisht. And it was when we give a question, why is there a nisht? Why is there nothing?
Nothing.
So he responded in an oblique response, but listen, I'll give you the Yiddish or my botched version of Yiddish. He said, "Remfert nisht." All he does is rearrange the words. The question was really, why does Hashem not answer? He rearranges the words and he says his answer is no. What does he mean to say? Hashem cares. Hashem listens. It's just sometimes no is the best answer. It is often not the answer that we want to hear or that we're prepared to receive. But that's sometimes what he says. A similar idea the Stipler talks about in Kabbalistic terms, that tefillos, all of our tefillos, you know who likes to quote this? Some of you may have heard of Steyer. He says this over a lot of the times in his Shiurim. You should do yourselves a favor and listen to a lot of Torah that Rabbi Steyer says over. It's always profound. So he quotes this, the Stipler, that the tefillos that we daven, you say, your tefillos, they weren't answered. You have no idea. According to the Mekubalim, all tefillos are answered. Many of them enter what would be the equivalent of some massive cosmic warehouse. And they're used. It's just not always in ways we anticipate. Sometimes what we daven for goes into effect on behalf of others. And sometimes there are other ways. The tefillas, for example, of the victims of the Nazis may have brought the Balei Tshuva back to Torah today. And like that. Meaning, we can't make calculations. And suddenly we start to
Is there a source for that?
What's that?
Is there a source for that?
Sure there is. Sure. It's all over. It's in the Gemara in Brachos. The tefillah of somebody that you davens on behalf of his friend is more effective than the same tefillah that he davens for himself. That's just one of many sources, and I'm not even getting into the Kabbalistic sources for this. But it's a very accepted, widespread idea that everything counts. It's just we can't measure. Who are we? And consider, Ezra, I'm sorry, I think you would have benefited, and if you want, I get no commission on this, but Eitan has graciously posted the whole series on Iyov on YouTube. I think you might benefit from going through. We've been talking about these themes for a while, and a lot of them are themes that you and I have discussed in the course of the year, including
I make
this.
no promises, but I'll try.
There are absolutely sources to this. What's that?
I make no promises, but I'll try. I'll try to watch it.
Whatever you want to do. Look, we come back to something very fundamental, and we've sort of been saying this, but I need to point it out, especially as we wrap things up tonight. Bechira Chofshis, freedom of choice, means necessarily, I mean, this should be obvious, there has to be an option for evil. The question, of course, then, if built in to the premise of creation and to the existence of human beings who are created in a divine spirit, but with freedom of choice and a massive Yetzer Hara, a drive for physicality. So that means that there's going to be evil, and a lot of it is going to be perpetuated by human beings. So the question, according to many, is really not where was Hashem. The question is really where was man. Consider Iyov himself. Iyov, if you want to open up one last time, I don't think I'm quoting Iyov again. It's early on. I skipped it intentionally. I saved some of the best for last. Iyov in the 11th chapter. By the 11th chapter, Iyov is not doing so great. Anybody remembers who tracked all this? He's not in his, let's say, proudest moment. But he has the doozy of a pasuk. It's pasuk 12, Perek 11, pasuk 12. He says, well, the Hebrew's hard, but I'll say it anyway, and then I'll translate. The Hebrew says, "V'ish navuv yelevav, va'ayer pera adam yivaled." The English goes like this: that the hollow man might win a heart, that a wild donkey might yield a man. There are actually different interpretations. Welcome to the wonderful world of Iyov. It's so far, by the way. It's so far. It's a quotable pasuk about the emptiness of man, certainly in comparison with his creator. That our heart ultimately comes out to be something of a hollow instrument. That that we're likened to a donkey. The evil is a force that we have to necessarily deal with in our lowly status in this world, and sometimes evil has a good effect on us. Another quote from I'm quoting another source that Rabbi quotes. There was a figure, a secular Jew, who survived the camps. His name was Viktor Frankl. He wrote extensively. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and founded a field of psychotherapy called logotherapy. Very interesting ideas. And he, in reflecting on his experiences in the camps, noticed that evil in the world sometimes it gives people, the other people, an opportunity to develop sometimes not only good midos, but sometimes the noblest, most transcendent midos that without the evil they wouldn't have had. And he cites several examples of these unbearable, inhuman circumstances that brought out absolutely the best in people. People were just wonderful in the face of it, and who knew? And sometimes you see people you never expect anything from, and when confronted with catastrophe and outright rishus, they rose to it. There's a story. You're familiar with a figure named Simon Wiesenthal?
Yeah.
Nazi hunter. Interesting book he wrote, also reflecting on the Holocaust, on an experience during the Holocaust. He called it The Sunflower, about a Jew near the end who's brought to the deathbed of a Nazi official. And the Nazi official asks his forgiveness for all of the evil that he personally brought about. And the Jew is confronted with this ultimate kind of a question. And of course, Wiesenthal does the classic academic secular thing. He takes to it a bunch of different figures, theologians, I love that word, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, set up for a joke, and a New York Times editorialist, and all kinds of people, and they all give different answers. Right? Do you forgive him? Do you not forgive him? I mean, the question is really kind of ridiculous because, what does that mean? I can speak on behalf of somebody else? What does that mean? I can forgive. I told you about my experience once in Yad Vashem, where I think she was Korean woman came over to me, and I don't know why she thought I was Jewish, but she approached me and she said she was clearly overwhelmed with emotion and clearly had learned something that she never knew previously about what had happened, the enormity of the Holocaust. And she said, I just want you to know I am so sorry. And I'm so glad that I've worked on my midos, because my first impulse was I was about to say to her, I just want you to know on behalf of the entire Jewish people, I forgive you. But I didn't say it. I'm a good boy. I didn't say that. Anyway, that was the setup for the Sunflower. And Wiesenthal was in a situation where people were davening and he wouldn't daven anymore. He was somebody who, I don't know what kind of faith he had to begin with, certainly wasn't enhanced by his experience in the Holocaust. And he told a great rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer Silver, you know of him because he was the rabbi in the story about the going to the orphanages afterwards and saying Kriya Shema. I just wrote a perfectly good story for anybody who's never heard it before. But anyway, the same Rabbi Silver said that why didn't he daven? And Rav Silver asked him. So Wiesenthal told him that he had once seen a man in the camps who smuggled in a sidur and traded it for people's rations. And that's what because people. And so he said that guy was so cynical. He took a sidur and he used it to trade for people's food. He said anybody who used religion for selfish gain, I don't want any part of it. So Rabbi Silver, who was an eloquent individual, in addition to being a tzaddik, he said that turn it around. Look at the godless of the people who were prepared to give up their own rations for the sake of a Sidur, to be able to reach out to Hashem. What is the Satan doing throughout Sefer Iyov? He's telling Hashem the measure of the human being is not how he responds to life when everything is going terrifically, when everything's convenient. How does man respond when he's brought to the ultimate brink, when he's experiencing extreme sorrow? Then you'll find the true man. And Iyov may be forgiven that he wasn't nitpas, he wasn't caught in his own, because he spoke out of line when he was suffering. Okay, Hashem gives him some room, elbow room on that. But Iyov, we see, is not necessarily the greatest individual to walk the planet. They're far greater individuals who, when pushed to the brink, come out much better. There's a even more broad question. I don't think we've even approached it. That's kind of surprising too, because it feels like we've talked about everything, no? But there's an even broader question here that one can ask, and that is, Hashem is a kol yachol. That means he can do anything, yeah? So then he must know that these questions, we've been calling it theodicy, it's really a Christian word for it, but these questions of suffering and our perception of randomness and how Hashem works in his divine measure of judgment, why doesn't he make the explanation for all this more accessible? Remember, at the very beginning of this series, Moshe Rabbeinu asked him, and he gave an elusive response. Iyov, his friends, they've been asking, and Hashem just answers in a whirlwind with a bunch of rhetorical questions. That's a choice. What are we meant to understand from this? I mean, Hashem equally as easily could just tell us. Here's why. Consider a pasuk in the Navi Chavakuk. I'll read it in English too. The Navi Chavakuk, why do you know Chavakuk? He's one of the Treasar. He's got a very famous pasuk, Chakelo b'chol yom shiavo. Based on those words, Rambam formulates his famous Ani Mamin, that the Mashiach will come. I'll wait for him anytime that he should come. That's all based on Chavakuk. So the same Chavakuk has a pasuk. He says, the future holds a vision. One who announces the end does not lie. And here's the verse. It may tarry, wait for it. Be assured it will come. Bo yavo. The arrogant is perverse, and a righteous man in his faith lives. Let me give you that in Hebrew. For some of you, it's going to sound familiar. For all of you, one day it'll be familiar. It's one of the quotable psukim. It's one I referred to earlier, but I gave you the full pasuk and not just the famous part. Here it is in Hebrew. Ki od chazon lamoed v'yafeach laketz v'lo yechazev. He won't disappoint. Im yismamea chakelo. Even if he delays, wait for him. Ki vo yavo, he'll surely come. Lo yacher, he won't delay. So that, what is the Navi telling us? We can understand Hashem's ways. If we could try to penetrate these questions, it certainly might make us wise. It won't necessarily strengthen our emunah. Suffering, as we all do, as Iyov certainly did, provides an opportunity because it breaks us down. The difficulty involved makes us pushes us and actually gives us an expression to demonstrate our love of Hashem. That really is part of what the Satan's trying to prove. You know, who are you really? What are you made of? Are you really a loyal person to Hashem? Finally, I'll give Chazal the last word on this. The Gemara asks in Baba Basra, why does the Bible, specifically the third section of the Bible that we call Ksuvim, why doesn't it begin with Iyov, right? If chronologically Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it, thereby it certainly came long before the rest, why isn't it first? And we said yesterday also that, in many ways, if Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it at the very beginning, because it's fundamental to our experience in this world, So the Gemara answers, the reason we don't start with it is because we don't start that the Chazal in their wisdom didn't want to lead off anything with the description of punishment. It's too much, it's too heavy, too harsh. It says Rus, because at one point it said Rus comes first. We're about to read, I'll translate that into different pronunciations. There's Root, and there's also Ruth for anybody. We'll be reading that in a couple days on Chag Matan Torah. Anybody who does not have a copy of the book, I would call you utterly ruthless. So Ruth, the Gemara says, has punishments too, but see, Ruth ends on a positive note. What's the positive note that Ruth actually ends with? David comes out of Ruth, right? He's the great grandson. And because of that, it precedes Iyov. Iyov is understood by Chazal to be pretty heavy. Tosfos there suggests something interesting. Tosfos wonders and says, Iyov also maybe you'd think ends positively. And then, of course, we're back to one of our many quandaries, our doubts about does Iyov really end positively? Maybe the view was that all of this was, and Tosfos says this right there on the spot, maybe all of his good tidings at the end in this world were meant letordo min ha'olam, as Tosfos conclude, to drive him out of this world, to show that he's not going to get any olam haba because of his grave mistakes. There are other answers too. There is a final note of grace, and I'll conclude our discussion with this. It's from the Gemara in Brachos. Remember the very beginning? A lot of you were here for that. We talked about the different, who is Iyov, when did he live, the different opinions. I had a certain penchant for Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. I'll be so impressed when somebody maybe have it in their notes. Remember what Rabbi Yochanan said? Where and when did Iyov live?
In Ashkelon.
At the top.
No, you're on the right track.
In Tveria.
Tveria?
Tveria.
It's close.
He's in Tveria. Yeah. He was in Tveria. And he came with the Ole Bavel. So there were any number of problems with that interpretation, not the least of which was Tveria wasn't a known entity until long after the Ole Bavel came around. It was built by Herod Antipas at the end of the Second Temple period, right? So what does it mean? He lived in Tveria? Do you remember the pshat we suggested?
Because he lived in Tveria.
Right. So in a sense, you could postulate. It doesn't say that it's explicitly, but it's a reasonable speculation that he saw himself in Iyov, right? And therefore he came up and he lived in Tveria because I'm Iyov and you're Iyov and we're all Iyov.
Mm-hmm.
Was Rabbi Yochanan's. And remember, Rabbi Yochanan certainly knew from hardship 10 of his own children died. 10, the number again is very striking. Iyov loses 10, Rabbi Yochanan lost 10. Right. So the Gemara says this: when Rabbi Yochanan would finish the book of Iyov, he would say the following line, and I'll say it in a moment, just a comment on this too. Notice how this statement, when he would finish Sefer Iyov, what does that strongly indicate?
He did it a lot.
Got it, exactly. Right? He came back to it and came back to it, and he always. I'm now, hypothesizing here, but it seems very compelling. He probably found all kinds of gems each time he came back to it. So when he would finish Sefer Iyov, he would say the following line, and it's a very famous line, and it's been converted into a modern song, and here it is. He said, "Sof adam lamus, sof behema l'shchita." The end of man is to die. The end of the animal is to the slaughterhouse. V'kol lemisa hemomdim, and everybody is standing, is poised towards death. Ashrei mi shegadol b'Torah, va'amal b'Torah, va'osanachas ruach liyotzra. Fortunate, happy is the one who grows up for Torah, who toils and works hard for Torah, and thereby gives his creator great nachas, great gentleness and happiness of spirit. That's what we're doing in this world. Sof adam lamus, sof behema l'shchita, v'kol lemisa הם עומדים, אשרי מי שגדל בתורה ועמל בתורה ועושה נחס רוח ליוצרו. My own reflection on this, didn't expect this particular series, didn't know it would fall out so thematically perfectly with everything going on in the world with the coronavirus. I also didn't exactly know how many sessions we take, certainly didn't plan to end before Chag Matan Torah. But isn't this utterly appropriate, right? What are we doing in this world? We're learning Torah. Rabbi Greenwald came over to me this morning, showed me the Luach. Luach brings Ravolbi, who cites a tradition that we've now officially begun the Shlosh Yemei Hagbala, the 3 days, just like the Jews in anticipating Matan Torah itself, separated from their wives, counted down 3 days and tried to elevate themselves in every way possible so that they could reach the epiphany, the greatest spiritual heights that was known to human beings at the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai. And we're starting that process right now. The way we prepare is to buckle down and learn lots of Torah. Everybody in their own way, to their own capacity. We all have different abilities, but Hashem sees your efforts, knows you're trying hard, and we should make a big hishtadlus. Comments, questions?
Rabbi.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier you were quoting a pasuk. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you said it said in the pasuk that although he may tarry, and then later on in the same pasuk it says he won't delay. Isn't that a kind of hypocritical?
Well, you don't mean hypocritical. You mean it seems to be contradictory.
Yeah.
I think what it goes back to is our understanding of Mashiach. He will. Lo ya'acher means, it's a bad translation maybe, but lo ya'acher means he will come. We just may want it to come. Our perception of it, though, is that he's tarrying. Because we want it to be immediate. You know, the neurotic types who go around singing, we want Mashiach now. Chazal have strong words of criticism. They say that those people are dochef, esakates. They're trying to force, as it were, Hashem's hand and bring the end. Hashem will bring it when it's time, when we're worthy, when He understands that it's auspicious. It's auspicious to do so. We will meet again tomorrow. We'll do a different topic. Does anybody have a request? Should I give you what I'm thinking, and then you'll request, or somebody want to lead with a request?